Learning how to play music is a lifetime endeavor that requires a lot of hard work, but can be made a bit more smooth through different avenues of education. In this video, I wanted to take a bit of a dive into the three different arenas of learning that are most prominent to me and talk about several different benefits and challenges that can come with each one. While I go through these categories, please feel free to write in the comments about your own experiences and share any other benefits and challenges you might have faced. So the three different education arenas that I believe are the most popular right now are private lessons, music school programs, and online courses or masterclasses. So let's talk about the online course masterclasses first. Let's talk about the pros. The first one that I can think of would be its affordability. It's generally going to be on the cheaper side of things. From what I've seen, like 15, 20 bucks can get you, one masterclass or maybe even a month subscription into like a catalog that you can access anywhere or at any time. The other pro that goes along with this that I just said is you have that access anywhere and anytime. So on your phone, on your computer, you get to pace your learning as quickly or as slow as you want. What's nice about it too is you can kind of rewind, slow things down, and then just repeatedly take the same lesson until you really get what you want and need. Another pro is you can learn from anyone around the world pretty easily. So the access of the teachers or musicians or producers that you might want to kind of study with really opens up a lot, and you have a plethora of folks that you can either study from in particular, or you can actually explore a lot of people for a lower price across the board. Going along with that too, you can be very specific and you can learn from a musician or a producer that you particularly like, that you might have discovered on social media or YouTube or whatnot, and then really zone in on like, hey, I like this particular person, what they're doing, how they go about it, and really take advantage that they have courses that basically go over things that you might want to know, their own play style, their perspective musically, and so on and so forth. Now for the cons, online courses and masterclasses kind of require you to know what is going on to get the most out of it, which is generally true with any kind of asynchronous type of learning platform. So say you might be like more of a beginner and you're looking for beginner stuff, you have to be very particular about what you're getting from any particular content creator or educational creator. And you have to be very wise about, okay, what do I need? And do they actually have things for me? Because my experience with, not just music, but over, the course of like trying to find answers for various things, sometimes I'll be looking for information on a particular subject. I'll go to forums, even Reddit or whatnot. And then sometimes the language, if I'm trying to figure something out, I won't be too keen on the nomenclature or the vocabulary being used in solving a particular problem, because I'm new to the arena or area I'm trying to learn about. So I have to do some extra homework just to get to on par with like what people are talking and do extra research or whatnot. So you might have to plug in some holes or like fill in some gaps or connect dots on your own just to get the most out of a particular course or lesson that you might find interesting. But if they're talking about certain types of harmony approaches or whatnot, and you don't know the first thing about certain types of theory that would help, or that is the groundwork for what they're actually doing, you have to learn that. And if they don't provide a course on that, or if they're assuming that you just know, you have to do a lot of the homework leading up to it. Another con is you can't really double check with a teacher or whoever you're studying with and ask specific spotlight questions. So if you need something, like I was saying, to essentially fill in the gaps, you're on your own for the most part. Ideally, if it's a good masterclass or, you just happen to know enough, you'll fill in those gaps yourself. But there is a possibility that you might be left behind in some spots, which is not ideal, and it can be very frustrating. The last con that I would say for now would be going through this avenue requires some legit discipline to keep on track with your learning. So there's no accountability. It's really on your own. It's very DIY. You're getting guided to, certain things that you want, but in order for you to get better, you have to really be on point because no one else is going to hold you accountable other than yourself. And I feel like a lot of times, a lot of students, including myself, might have issues with that. It's much easier if you have some type of accountability. In some courses or some creators have communities like Discord communities or their own platforms that kind of keep or give you a chance to be held accountable through like just discussions and whatnot, and then posting you practicing through this particular side, which is pretty ideal. But if they don't have that, which not all of them do, then it really requires you to be very on top of things and to commit consistently and repeatedly over to your own growth. So if you need that extra motivation or that extra discipline, this is going to be the online course kind of path is going to be a bit more challenging. Now let's move on to private lessons. So the first pro would be the individual attention and focus of that teacher working with you, basically getting straight to the point, or basically the point of where they can understand, oh, okay, you need this in particular. That kind of attention is unbeatable because a good private teacher is going to meet you where you're at and should be able to evaluate where your holes in your knowledge and technical facility and perspective are, and connect dots with the knowledge that you already have with the knowledge that you're trying to attain. So that is a very ideal situation to be put in that private lessons can really address. Another pro would be the accountability through consistent lessons are already built in. So if you are taking weekly or bi-weekly or some kind of consistency with lessons, that gives you kind of like goalposts that you have to kind of show up, number one, to the lesson in the first place, but then also there is pressure involved that will allow you to grow consistently with those lessons. So now it's not only just self-discipline. I mean, you still need self-discipline between lessons. It's not like you're going to generally take lessons every day because that would be wildly expensive. But just once a week, just kind of reorients you in the direction where you're trying to go. And if you keep going, you're going to see massive gains, and that accountability from an instructor that you see consistently is going to help you move closer to your goals in a really forthright direction. Another thing is lessons definitely should be catered toward your interests and musical direction and ability. Like I was kind of mentioning earlier, everything gets to be catered to where you are at and where you are going. So if those interests change too, the teacher should be able to pivot. Ideally, if they can't, that's all right too. Ideally, the teacher will tell you, oh, I'm not really educated in that type of department. So for example, you might be playing guitar, learning how to play guitar, and then you're interested in writing music, but really producing music, using a DAW and whatnot. So some guitar teachers or some teachers like myself can pivot into that and actually include your guitar playing in that pursuit as well. So you're getting coverage in a lot of different things. And that flexibility is pretty ideal. If they can't, that's okay. Ideally, they will kind of point you in the right direction, maybe suggest a certain person to study with for that particular thing. And maybe you can also take lessons with them or switch over. Another thing to consider too is if you're comfortable, you can always either switch teachers when you feel you've gotten what you need from that particular teacher, or study with multiple teachers at a time if that is an option for you. Again, there's a lot of things that go into it, and that's part of the cons I'm going to go over, but there is a lot of flexibility in the sense of you can always switch teachers, and that should always be an option for you, or you should always feel like you have that option to use at any point. Speaking of flexibility, the flexibility of scheduling lessons is pretty nice. It can work with your busy life schedule. Maybe you're already in school, maybe you're working, maybe you have kids, or maybe you have all three. So you can find times and adjust your schedule, and your teacher can adjust their schedule to fit your current situation and go from there. The last pro, which is a pro and can be a con depending on how you think about it. It can be cost effective compared to school tuition for sure, and the flexibility in costs can be seen through the frequency. For example, you can meet weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever works for you, and then you can also dictate how long, for the most part, like how long your lesson should be or it can be. For example, half an hour, 45, an hour and a half, and whatnot. That kind of flexibility is specific to private lessons because you are dealing with one person. So that's something that you can definitely take advantage of. And also you can change from weekly to bi-weekly or to monthly, usually with a teacher, unless they have something specific that they don't do in terms of scheduling like that, which is cool, but you just have to discuss with that person. Now for the cons. The costs for having a private instructor can be pretty expensive depending on the teacher. So the range can be between $50 to $150 per hour, and even more than that. I've seen $200 an hour for some instructors. And that's going to be something that you as a student have to really grapple with and figure out, okay, is this worth it for me? No one can really tell you how much these lessons are worth it for you. You have to figure out for yourself. So also those ranges, that range from 50 to 150 or even 200, usually a lot of lessons are like $100 or lower, for sure, or between 50 and 100. And it depends on the level you're at too. And then what you're comfortable with, paying or whatnot. So if you are more of a beginner, you could probably find a solid teacher for the lower end amount. And then once you feel you've gotten far enough, or you want to move on to another teacher that's more equipped with the things that you want to pursue, that's where things might get a bit more expensive, but you will be getting more of what you want. It's a double-edged sword. Again, there's still some flexibility with the pricing in terms of the frequency. So you can also kind of play some chess, financial chess that way, and move forward. Another con or reality that you kind of have to do is finding the right teacher for yourself, because that's going to be a bit more of a challenge, because I want to stress that like you have full control over who you study with. And sometimes it's not a like first shoe you put on that it fits, with teachers. Sometimes you have to like go through a couple or a few. So that can be frustrating. But that is kind of a con, but it's also a pro because you have the ability to kind of pivot whenever you want. But that can be time consuming and financially a challenge. So that's something that you want to keep in mind. I'd say the last con would probably be there's no real networking opportunities built in unless your teacher introduces or helps you, put you in different situations where you can meet and collaborate with other people around your level. That ends up being something that you have to do a lot of groundwork to incorporate into your own growth, especially if you're playing something like jazz or like any kind of social musics. I would title like jazz, maybe funk, some R&B, blues, or anything like that. If you're playing classical, it's a little bit different. But regardless, actually, like you have to build your network to really get like an expansive education in music. It's pretty ideal to learn with other folks, or at least be around the environment of other artists, because that'll help like inspire and motivate and give you experience. So unless the teacher is actively putting you in positions and connecting you with folks, that isn't built in. So you have to, kind of do it yourself. But there are instructors that will help you kind of like connect with folks, or maybe groups of folks that you can, work with. So the last arena of education that I want to talk about is the classroom or music school environment. So one of the first pros I could think of was studying with other like-minded folks. Basically your classmates, like people who are sharing and learning and experiencing and practicing all together. So that's really a powerful thing to be sharing that growth, and is very motivating. It kind of unburdens the self-motivation, even though that's like very much still should be there. It's a bit easier to be motivated when you see like people that you are working with and playing with also making certain strides, and you guys are all kind of in it together. So that teamwork to make the dream work kind of vibe is very, very powerful, and is very ideal for a lot of folks to really motivate them to get to the next level. Another pro is the accountability through assignments, performances, and practicing with others is built in, because you have a grade you have to make. And in order for you to get evaluated, you have to have things that you turn in, or performances or juries that you have to play at. So those accountability checks are set kind of in stone through the curriculum or the syllabus. And that keeps you really on the straight and narrow for the most part. That will keep you on track, at least within the program and the way the program is set up. So that is also something that's very, very powerful, and again, unburdens or offloads a lot of the self-motivation kind of thing. So when you don't have that desire or inspiration, you just kind of do it anyways, because like the road is kind of paved for you. You just got to keep going down it. Another great bonus is networking with other musicians and getting to know other people. So in a classroom setting, in a school setting, you're kind of put into a pot of other folks or generally around your music level, and all are also interested in the music that you are trying to make or just get better at. So having access to a lot of people that you already know have the same perspective or align with your pursuits, it's very, very handy to have right out the gate. And you don't have to really go, very far. You can just go, across the dorm hall and meet somebody, or like in the practice rooms, like, hey, I hear you're practicing this, I'm practicing this, so on and so forth, and just make connections everywhere very easily, because everybody is there for very similar purposes. Now for the cons, one thing, you might get a bad teacher and be stuck with them for an entire term or semester or quarter, whatever, amount of time. And by bad teacher, like that is subjective. So there are different types of teachers that teach in different ways. You might not vibe with them, or they might be going over material you're just not interested in. or they have a particular way of doing things that is really not aligned with your pursuit. But there's less flexibility because, well, a teacher's teaching in class. They might have specific goals that you have to hit to pass their class. You might not get along with them for whatever reason. But in a school setting, that course might be like, you might have an intro course that you have to take in order to get to the course that you actually want to take with the teacher you want to work with. But you have to get through that course first, and that's a possibility you might run into. And it's unfortunate sometimes, but that's something that you might have to just eat that on the way. Another con might be classroom or school setting might not be your ideal path of learning. You might just not flourish in that type of environment. Maybe you're a bit more of a introverted and want to really like focus in specifically, and so like working with other people or in that environment, just it doesn't really affect you in ways that in a positive ways that can push you forward. And that's, not everybody learns the same way in the same types of environments. So you have to be very aware of like, well, is this the type of environment that I'm going to flourish or be okay with for how many years or semesters or so on and so forth. So something to consider. A big con is and a lot of people talk about this, is the cost of tuition. It's really expensive to just go to school, any school really. The cost of tuition really is a burden on a lot of different professions, musicians especially. So that's something that you have to really, really, really think about. Student loans are no joke. And you have to make sure that you feel like you are getting what you want and need for your pursuits built into the cost of the tuition that you are paying. So that is that's something to spend time on. So looking through, are these teachers or are the teachers and professors people that I actually look up to and want to, learn from? Are the courses offered like going to nourish my musicianship and perspective and artistic endeavors? And does it match up with the price tag? That's something that you have to really be confident in, or at least, understand going into it, and then going from there. And then the last part could be location. It could be really far from where you are currently, like where you live. Maybe you're just not really a city person, and the school that you want to go to that have all these great things is in the middle of like New York or Chicago or Miami or LA. Maybe it's not. There are conservatories that are in the middle of nowhere, and they offer great experiences, but you are not in an environment that you can expand from outside of the actual school. So the location is something that you really want to also be aware of, so that way you can make a better decision for yourself and move forward with confidence and get everything that you need, or most of what you need. So the ideal thing would be to have a combination of all of these, I would say. A combination of all of these makes your learning even more expansive if you're able to do it. So if you are, at school and taking private lessons, or maybe doing some master classes, but also taking private lessons, where you can kind of cross-reference each environment with each other to get the most out of it. So, like a master class video or online course that you might take, you might be like, oh, okay, I don't get this one part. You can take it to your private teacher and be like, hey, this person is talking about this subject. Like, could you expand upon this? And then because you're having an individual lesson, they can really address what you need or want, or like fill in the gaps of that subject matter. So that's something to keep in mind. That is pretty ideal. So now I want to hear from you guys. What way do you find yourself learning the most? What problems have arisen in your pursuit of growing musically? Has it been the environments, the types of avenues you've sought to gain knowledge, but they don't really like fill in enough gaps? Tell me what you feel holds you back the most, and let's all share our experiences and maybe, find some answers together. So remember to leave a comment and share those things with us, and I'll try and reply as well to my experiences, but also my thoughts on your guys' experiences. And let's all grow together.